Welcome to my podcast. I'm Manjit Kaur and I'm a narcissistic abuse recovery therapist. This podcast series is about telling the stories of victims of narcissistic abuse who have sent me their stories to share anonymously to make their voices heard. If you have a story you would like me to tell about you, contact me via my website. This is a story about a woman who contacted me to share her story. Her name has been changed to protect her identity. I'm going to call her Jessica and her husband Derek. Trigger warning. This story mentions domestic violence and financial abuse. This is Jessica's story with Derek and how it all began. Jessica reflects back and has a look in her eyes that if only she knew back then about Derek, she would never have been with him. There was always something off with him, even from the very beginning. When you look at Derek, he looks great on paper, and he seemed like the perfect guy. If you look at his resume of him and his credentials and success, he's everything a person could ever want. But Jessica warns that you should always look deeper than looks, success, and credentials. If there are red flags, you have got to weigh out the risks and really decide whether that person is really worth it. Derek had a great future ahead of him, and he was charming and nice, and he was very handsome. Jessica uses the word nice because kindness and being nice are two different things. She realizes he was kind when he wanted something, but he was never nice. There was always something off with Derek, now that she reflects back. Everyone Jessica knew loved Derek, and they would always ask about him. This was the first relationship that she ever had that no one asked her, "How does he make you feel?" Jessica would often say that he could be beating me behind closed doors, and no one would even think to ask. To everyone, Derek was the perfect guy, and he still gives the perception that he is. He was charming and extremely good looking, with a promised career path. It was a dangerous combination that was a breeding ground for Jessica to start to question her own self-worth. Often Jessica would bring up some concerns in the relationship to her family or friends, and she felt easily brushed aside, that she was making a big deal out of nothing. She felt, how could she even think about questioning her boyfriend? Derek checked off every box to everyone. Jessica had only been dating Derek for 2 weeks, and her family welcomed him with open arms and allowed him to move his furniture into Jessica's parents' home as he was relocating to a different city. Everyone made Derek feel like he was a part of Jessica's family. In a very short space of time, Derek had full access to Jessica's family home during the day, and even her car. He would drop her to work and use her car all day until it was time to pick her up from work. Jessica had full trust in Derek, and she never doubted a thing he did or said. In the early years, Derek was intoxicating, and Jessica now realizes that she was love-bombed. There was no such term back then, and she knew nothing more other than Derek is showing love to her. Jessica always felt that Derek was hers, but yet always felt slightly out of reach. She was unsure why she had this feeling at the time, but she now knows that he was love-bombing her, but also subtly abusing her until the mask fully came off over time. At the time, Jessica was addicted, and the more time she spent with Derek, the more she wanted him. There was not a single moment in the day she didn't think about Derek. She thought about him all the time. She now realizes this was because he always felt slightly unavailable to her. It was always about Derek and about his needs, she realizes. He knew how to keep Jessica on her toes, and whenever Derek felt that Jessica was pulling away, it was like he knew how to pull her back in. Derek would wine and dine Jessica every chance he could, knowing that she was a foodie. He took her to all of her favourite restaurants where they would talk for hours about their life together. Jessica was completely taken by Derek and so immersed in a life together with him and a future. Derek would paint the most glorious future ahead of them, and Jessica thought she had everything with him. Derek even went as far as fantasizing about what their house would look like and how many children they would have. Jessica felt that she had met her Prince Charming. She reflects back now on the present day and asks herself, was Derek future faking? Derek knew Jessica loved to travel, so they would vacation quite often, although at the time Derek was still a student, so Jessica would end up paying for most of their vacations. Jessica offered to pay without question because Derek had painted an amazing future together. She wanted to be there for him and knew Derek would pay for things once he was settled in his career. Jessica felt she had found her soulmate, or so she thought. She didn't feel like she had to separate anything from Derek, as they had moved in together very early on and he was living with her parents. What's hers was his, and what's his was hers, she thought. However, oddly enough, he always made Jessica feel like it was her fault that Derek had no money. She never once belittled him or put him down, as she knew he was going to be successful. In hindsight, Jessica reflects back and tries to find the red flags she missed. They are very obvious to her now, but back then she was too blinded by the love she felt for Derek. She looks back at the travels they had in the early days, when Derek didn't even make enough money. He made her feel like he was doing her a favour by taking her on holiday, even though she paid for them. He now accuses her that he was trying to make her happy, and she was ungrateful. She recognizes another major red flag, which occurred on one of their vacations. She found out that Derek was still talking to his ex. She wishes she would have run away from Derek then and called it a day. She should have listened to her gut. She had an odd feeling as she noticed that Derek was constantly checking his phone. When Jessica asked him about it, he said it was nothing and even showed her his messages. She noticed there were tons of messages amongst the other messages with his ex-girlfriend. Jessica was gutted. She felt heartbroken and betrayed by Derek. She had let him stay with her parents and had supported him, but yet she was not enough, she thought. She immediately ended the trip and went home. It didn't end for Derek though, because for an entire month he love-bombed her and wouldn't take no for an answer that she does not want to be with him. He would come to Jessica's parents' house every day and show up at her work. Derek even had a meeting with Jessica's family and cried to everyone about how sorry he was for the breakup. Eventually, this worked and the hoovering sucked her right back in and they were back together. Jessica's own family convinced her to give Derek another chance, so she did. Everyone was too blinded by Derek and what he was really like. Jessica had doubts of taking Derek back, but her guilt and Derek's love bombing and her family telling her that Derek was a nice guy made her think, everyone makes mistakes, right? So give him another chance. She battled with her thoughts and couldn't stop thinking of the many other good times she had with Derek. Jessica convinced herself they were just phone calls between Derek and his ex and nothing else happened. So why not take him back? She took him back and realizes that it was the biggest mistake of her life. She should have followed her gut and been more aware of what was happening rather than making herself believe Derek's lies. She shouldn't have listened to anyone for that matter. About a year after that, Derek and Jessica were married and she thought all of her dreams were coming true. Jessica described having the most elaborate wedding with all of their friends and family to share their happiness. They had guests from all over the country, and it was a magical day with everyone admiring the dream couple. It didn't take long before Jessica's world crumbled shortly after, and she didn't know what to do. About a month after their wedding, he used all of their wedding money to pay off a credit card debt. Jessica was shocked and hurt by this, as Derek didn't share he was going to do this. She should have known there and then that this would be what the future of the marriage would look like. When she confronted him, he told her his credit card was high because he used it to buy her engagement ring. This was the shaping of future accusations where everything was always Jessica's fault. Of course, she didn't know this at the time. Derek told Jessica that he didn't mean to hit the pay all button and that it was a mistake. They were broke with nothing in their account, and Jessica had no one to turn to. For Jessica to trust Derek, she asked him that she needed to see what his credit cards were. This is when she found out that he was about $250,000 in school debt and about $50,000 in debt with credit cards. The real kicker was when she found out he also had an online gambling problem. It was there that Jessica felt cheated and lied to. Who was this man? She was besotted with him, and everyone loved Derek. But what was he really like? As soon as Jessica found out about the gambling, she made him stop right away. Jessica had no choice but to carry on in the marriage, as she felt she had no one to turn to. Everyone loved Derek, and she felt no one would believe her if she told them what was happening. They were newlyweds, and she thought these were just little teething problems and they would fix. But she was wrong. Shortly after, she noticed on his computer multiple porn sites. She was finding out more and more secrets from the man she had given her wedding vows to. It was one day. Jessica used Derek's computer to do some work, and every letter she hit on the computer, a porn site would pop up. She didn't know much about porn, so when she confronted him about it, he told her that all guys look at porn and that she was overreacting. Jessica felt rejected and felt that she was not good enough or pleasing enough, that he had to watch so much porn. Jessica's from a Catholic background and her family had immigrated to the USA, so Jessica felt like she could not bring these problems up to her family. She didn't think they would understand. Jessica could feel the burden of this marriage, his financial debts, gambling, porn addiction were an enormous burden that she did not know how to tackle after having such a beautiful wedding with everyone being so happy for them. They were the admired couple and the couple to be that everyone dreamed of. How could she let everyone down by bringing these problems up to the family's attention? She now wishes she should have left sooner. Back then, Jessica knew no better and believed all of Derek's lies, the gaslighting, the manipulation, and his love bombing that kept her confused and trapped for decades. She wishes she had the knowledge about narcissism, but 20 years ago, this was not talked about, and there was no social media to gather information. If she knew then, her life would be so different, she believes. But Jessica shares her story now to help others. To help others know that when you are stuck in a vortex of confusion and everyone else is gaslighting you because your husband has convinced them otherwise, to trust your gut. Trust what is happening around you and to get out before you become so deeply absorbed that there is no way out, because these are signs that are telling you that something is off. You just have to believe enough in yourself to walk away. It was after the discovery of the porn addiction that Jessica felt that she had to please Derek, so she started dressing more provocatively. She always felt like she needed to do more to keep his attention, but she soon realized it was never enough. No matter what Jessica did, it was not good enough. When they would go out to events or parties, she would catch him checking out other women. She was always made to feel less than she was. Whenever she questioned Derek, he would respond by saying, "Every guy looks at other women, and you are making a big deal out of this." Jessica looks back and remembers telling their therapist once that it felt different with him. His gazing at other women always felt more like an invitation and not just a glance at a pretty woman. Jessica often wondered where those gazes led to when she wasn't around. She often found herself questioning whether this was all in her head, or was this just him being a guy? Jessica felt paranoid and insecure, and she found herself checking his phone data through their cell phone carrier. She wanted some validation that this wasn't all in her head. She noticed through checking the records that he was on the internet every night. She knew what he was doing, and when she questioned him, of course he denied it. He denied everything. He denied he was still watching a lot of porn. One night, Jessica was laying on the couch with their son while he was falling asleep. Derek was only about 10 feet away from them, sitting on a chair by the window. When she looked over at him, she could see the images of naked women through the reflection of the window. He was looking at porn, right there in their living room, while his wife and infant child were only a few feet away. This was meant to have been a family moment that she thought meant the world to her, and she thought it was the same for Derek. But in no way were they on the same page. She felt stuck. She felt gutted. She couldn't help but wonder what she did. She felt she was lacking his needs, but she could do nothing to please Derek. Jessica needed just something from him. Just something to give her approval, from him to keep their family together, and that she was enough. The shame of not being enough for Derek made her work harder for something that was never really hers. She noticed there were women at his work and that he would always play around with. Derek never really had any male friends, which makes her wonder why. He always had the nurses at work who always loved his attention and charm. Whether it be the older nurses who he somehow made to feel like they needed to mother him and take care of him, or the younger ones who he always made feel like he was slightly available. She doesn't know exactly how many there were, although she could only imagine the numerous affairs he must have had. Jessica never felt settled, as they had to move a lot for Derek's work. She felt like she couldn't progress in her work or make friends. Every time they had to move, or he needed to train at a different hospital, it was always the same thing. The Prince Charming at work, that all the nurses, PAs or any other female he needed something from, he would charm and flirt with, and he never saw this as a problem. She wishes he would have been someone that would have been respected as a husband and a family man. Not as some cliche of VR or Grey's Anatomy. Derek loved the attention. She is convinced he in fact needed the attention. Life continued, and she found Derek changing more and more. To Jessica, this is the epitome of narcissistic abuse. She has been subjected to narcissistic abuse for the last 20 years, the entirety of her marriage. While some may think narcissistic abuse may just be and can just be caused by one person, it was not the case for Jessica. In her case, it was more of familial abuse, dictated by her mother-in-law. Jessica tells me that it has been the most cruel, vindictive, numbing and painful thing at times. It has been lonely and isolating, and the feeling of hopelessness does not go away. She realizes that during this marriage, everything was used against her. Everyone and every opportunity in life that she loved and cared about had either been destroyed or turned against her. For the longest time, she didn't even know that she was being abused. She just thought her mother-in-law was just a tough cookie who had an odd attachment to her son. She thought the relationship between Derek's mother and him would allow Jessica to have her own relationship with Derek, but the daily phone calls, constant manipulation, planning Jessica's life and vacations for her, she never seemed to be able to make it work. Not to mention her mother-in-law's constant negativity and harsh words to their family and friends. She managed to turn everyone against her, and when they would ask her to stop talking about them, they were told that she was just sharing her opinions and that she had a right to share her opinions, or that it wasn't her intent to cause harm and that she was just telling a story. However, there never really was a story. They were just lies, lies so horrible that she couldn't fathom where she would come up with them in her mind, or why she would want people to hate Jessica. She was a young mother who adored, loved and supported her son Derek in every way, and no matter what, it was never enough. Jessica was always painting the picture to Derek that it was her side versus their side. Her mother-in-law's constant paranoia and delusions did not stop. In fact, over time they just got worse, and eventually she turned the last person that she relied on and cared about against her. This was Derek. She turned Derek against her. There was no turning back as Derek's full mask was off. They continued to move for Derek's training, and this did not set her up for the downfall of their marriage. While Jessica is a professional, Derek's job and care for their growing family came last. He always put himself first and the family last. They finally moved about 1,000 miles away from Jessica's family and her hometown. This was where they would finally settle. She looks back now and realizes this was planned all along, and it was the prime picking for Derek and his family. It felt like they were on a witch hunt, and her name and her reputation were all up for the taking. Here in their new town, no one knew Jessica, and Derek and her in-laws could essentially write and tell any story about her that they wanted. She did not know this at the time, but Derek and his family had a lot of friends in their new town and lots of connections. Suddenly she found she was being accused of the most horrific and untrue things. She was told that she wasn't letting Derek be a father, and that Jessica was spending all the money and that she wasn't working. Jessica was told that being a mother was just a job, and that if she didn't do her job up to Derek's standards, that he would call Child Protective Services on her. Derek and his family accused her of all sorts of things. After accusing her, Derek would not talk to Jessica and their children for weeks at a time. He would walk into their home and walk straight upstairs to their bedroom and lock the door. Their son called his presence the Arctic. He was cold and mean, and this was a side to Derek she was seeing more and more. He had a look in his eyes that she had never seen before. It was like a light switch was flipped and kill mode was activated. She could always tell when Derek and his family would conspire, as Derek would worry about things he never worried about before. She was suddenly no longer allowed to talk to any other parents at their son's sporting events. Jessica was a Girl Scout troop leader, and Derek hated this and would always say mean things about it. Derek also stopped celebrating holidays and birthdays, and he didn't accompany Jessica and the kids to any school events and functions. As if these actions weren't painful enough, he would then accuse her of not letting him attend anything. He projected all the blame onto her. Derek was a completely different person to who she had met. The once charming Derek was gone, and it was like she did not know who he was. Derek's behaviour was changing drastically, and she noticed he was much more aggressive. When Derek was frustrated, he would throw things around or break things. He would punch holes in the walls, break the furniture, and lift their couches. He would also use things to hit Jessica. If that was not enough, he would start breaking her things, and when she would try to intervene, he would use the objects to hit or push her. He would then say, "Go ahead and call the cops. I will tell them it was you or that we tussled." Over time, she found he became worse and more physical. She didn't know at the time that throwing things or breaking things was a form of domestic violence. In these moments, when the person you love rages at you in a way you've never seen before, it would freeze Jessica in space. Derek did not hesitate to behave in this rageful manner in front of the children. It was like he didn't care. He knew exactly what he was doing and was ready to fight Jessica if she was going to say something or act on her threat of setting a boundary. The full mask had come off, and Jessica felt more trapped than ever. It was like nothing could stop Derek. Jessica was too afraid to speak up. She had no one nearby that was a good support system, and Derek had everyone fooled with how amazing he was. He had a successful career, while ensuring Jessica had nothing. Who was going to believe her, she thought. Even her whole family thought she had hit the jackpot. As all of the drama in the household was going on, Jessica was trying to establish her dream career, and things started taking off. For the first time in years, she felt hopeful. Derek was not really involved or was supportive, but he didn't interfere either. And then one dreaded day, she suddenly felt the energy and momentum switch. She couldn't figure out what was happening, so she Googled herself and found bad reviews about her business online. She knew where they were coming from, and she discovered some of the reviews were based out of her in-law's town. Essentially, the reviews said that the product isn't good. The person making the product is not good at her job and not to purchase the product. The tone of the reviews was also the same, saying, "I have the right to share my opinion," said one review. She knew exactly who this was, but at the same time had no evidence. As her career was being destroyed, Derek's career started to take off even more. He became the head of the Women and Children's Centre at their local hospital and threw himself into projects and public events that involve women and children of child abuse. One day she turned on the news and there he was. He was saying things like, "We must protect our women and children, and that if we see something, say something." Here was her own abuser in broad daylight, pretending to be a champion for women and children, while she sat in her house with holes in her walls from when Derek had lost his temper and caused the holes. She was trying to put her life back together and protect and take care of the children at the same time. She felt the tears run down her face as she saw Derek say all of these things about abuse and speaking up while he silenced her and created an image to the outside world where no one would believe her. She never knew cruelty and injustice could exist at the same time in front of her face in broad daylight. She felt and still feels like she lives in the twilight zone. Who would believe me now, she thought. She still has a tremendous burden ahead of her as post-separation abuse occurs and they have young children and he has full financial control and status in their town and an outstanding career. Jessica tells her story to help bring awareness for women and men in her position. She advises that when you see the first red flag, walk away. It only gets worse. She is so elated that there is so much more information about narcissistic abuse these days. Once you hear the terminology and understand the reasons behind the disorder, it's hard to turn away and turn a blind eye as to what is happening to you. While people may believe the term is becoming too common, she believes that there are more people in the world that are undiagnosed. She knows that no one hates a label more than a narcissist unless they are the ones doing the labeling and projecting onto you. Once you understand this mental disorder, you realize the person or people you are dealing with are mentally unwell and that their actions are deliberate, meant to hurt you, and are pathological. Jessica kept quiet for nearly 20 years, but a therapist once told her that mold grows in the dark and it's time to stop protecting the abuser. Jessica and Derek's relationship has ended, but Jessica knows she will survive. Jessica tells me that she is doing much better without Derek and the children are much happier. She finds courage and healing in sharing her story and being open with friends and family. She had kept the abuse a secret for far too long. She no longer wants to hide it. She had kept quiet for too long, protecting Derek and his family. She tells me that it is not always easy to leave, but she has taken the first step to freedom. She already feels divorced to Derek, even though they have not even started the process. She has checked out of the relationship. She did this a long while ago. Derek has moved out of the house and has his own place. This is the only way Jessica and the children could find peace in the home and stay together. The separation is helping her to heal and to find her voice when she is ready to take her next step. However, this has not stopped Derek from causing a disruption. Even though he has his own place, Derek still walks in and out of the home whenever he feels like it. He feels entitled to do this, and this has been hard on her and the children. Jessica eventually set a boundary and confronted Derek about his behaviour and lack of compassion. She told him she would take legal action against him if he didn't stop coming in and out of the home. This has put a stop to Derek barging in and out of the house, as he is too afraid of his image and how this would look if word got out. Jessica believes that Derek will never fully leave them alone, and it will never end because he is more worried about his image than the damage his behaviour is causing to Jessica and the children. Derek robbed her and the kids of their childhood, and he took away moments they could have had with them as a family. He destroyed their experience, their happiness, peace of mind, and created an unsafe environment. Jessica shares an important message of hope for every person out there who has suffered or is still suffering, or who lost their lives to narcissistic abuse. She shares that there is hope. The tree fell. It was loud and painful, and it hurt in more ways than you could ever imagine. She knows that Derek and his mother were the ones who chopped the tree down. For now, they are okay, and they'd continue to have space and to heal. Thank you for sharing your story, Jessica. You are a brave woman, and I know you are going to get through this. You took the first step in leaving and protecting yourself and the children. I wish you all the best. Whenever you are ready to take your next steps, you have support from friends and family now. Please like and share. If you have a story you would like me to share, email me via my website. Thank you for tuning into this episode.